Hey everybody, this is the Danny Rumph Classic Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Cohn. Today we go down to City Hall to spend some time with Councilmember at Large Isaiah Thomas. We get into the intersection of basketball and politics in his world, and he really breaks down a lot of his journey for us. Hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did. We are fortunate to take a lot of these podcasts on the road, and today, Councilman Isaiah Thomas welcomes us into this gorgeous office of his. Appreciate you very much. Councilman Isaiah Thomas joining the Danny Rumph Classic Podcast.
Thank y'all for having me. Very much appreciated. Welcome to my domain. This is where all the good work takes place.
That's right. This we had a few minutes to kind of hang out. We were waiting for you to get back and got a chance to look around. There's some great photos from the Danny Rumph Classic. There's a lot of diplomas and some good memories kind of tucked away around this office. This is great. So thank you again.
No, thank you for having me. This is my favorite little getaway area to really get some work done. And even my son enjoys it. I got a little PlayStation over there for him. So,
oh, perfect.
You know, kind of helps out the ambiance a little bit, so it's all good.
Keeps him busy over there in the corner while you got to get some stuff done.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
I want to start with your political journey. When you were younger, what brought you to politics? What was your first introduction to politics, and when did you sort of find your way into politics?
Yeah, I mean, my political journey is kind of boring. You know, I didn't grow up in a traditional political family. I mean, I was raised in a household where we were told to vote, right, every year, twice a year. Outside of that, you know, my father is a retired teacher and now was a teacher, union organizer, building rep, things of that capacity. So for me, you know, it was a journey that I kind of embarked on once I got into adulthood. My master's degree is in education. I always thought I would be a teacher and a coach. Clearly, why I love the Rumph Foundation so much, because of the great work they do with young people and other organizations like it. But I got involved in politics because I recognized that elected officials were making decisions that had a direct impact on my everyday life and young people in Philadelphia's everyday life. And I felt like that those decisions were not necessarily in our best interest. So, you know, the old folks in politics say, you know, either you either have a seat at the table or you on the menu. And for a long time in life, I watched young people be on the menu and not necessarily have a seat at the table. So I think my office, my seat represents youth and young people in the city of Philadelphia, and I try to make sure that every decision we make is in the best interest of our young people.
Was there someone that put this sort of bug in your ear about getting into politics?
It was actually Tony Payton. So Tony
Tell me
Payton
more.
was the state representative at the time in the 197th, I want to say. Jason Dawkins, State Rep Jason Dawkins has that seat right now, and the irony of that is that Jason and I actually graduated from high school together, like in the same class, like 4 seats away from each other. Both graduated from Frankfurt High School, and he's doing an amazing job there. But prior to Jason, one of the state reps that had the seat was Tony Payton. And at the time, Tony was probably the youngest state rep in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And Tony recruited me to work for him part-time. And while I was working for Tony part-time, I was running after-school programming and summer programming in Frankfurt. And Tom Corbett, who was the governor at the time, decided to deal with the deficit, the financial crisis around 2009 that the country seen. He decided to balance the back of Pennsylvania on education. And when he cut education funding, we seen tons of dollars get cut for out-of-school time-based initiatives. And for us who were really doing the work with young people on a consistent basis, it's like, why would you cut funding to programs that's working?
Sure.
And to me, that was an example of elected officials being out of touch. So, you know, I decided to run myself. I ran for city council in 2011, got my butt whipped. I can't say certain things, but got my butt whipped pretty bad. And,
yeah.
You know, it was a 10-year journey for me to get to city council, and here I am.
Yeah. I feel very strongly that in most professions, there's only so much you can learn in the classroom. That so much of what you learn is done on the job by being around people and just kind of doing it every day. And to a certain extent, getting thrown into the fire.
Sure.
For you, when you first find your way into office, you mentioned the 10-year journey. When you first find your way in, what are some of the things that you found yourself learning, maybe rather quickly, or did you have like a welcome to City Hall moment?
So I do agree with you that I think a lot of learned skills comes from being in the space, but I do respect the degrees.
Without a doubt, of course.
I mean, just this podcast right now, you know, I have a newfound respect for journalism, media, communication. You know, when I was first coming into city council, for example, I didn't even have a comms director my first day. And, you know, I was skeptical. I was like, do I need comms? Do you not need comms? And then the pandemic hit, right? And everything became, you know.
Because you were elected during the pandemic.
Right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I get sworn in January of 2020. Mm-hmm. Pandemic starts 3 months later. And so for me, you know, you go from, should I have a comms director or not, to now an entire comms department because, you know, I recognize how bad I am. when it comes to that space, but I also recognize how important that space is. And so you have to have trained professionals. That's an important part of politics because you got to get stuff right. And campaigns are the same way. You know, I think that there's a certain science to campaigns and to running for office, which is very different than governing. And when you're talking about people who fundraise, when you're talking about people who create messaging, you know, that's a craft, that's a skill set that people go to school for and essentially master to help put you in a position to be in office. You know, I'm just the face of it.
Yeah.
You know, without good people around me, nothing's gonna happen. I would say though, to answer your question in depth, as far as like when I got into city council, yeah, you're absolutely right. When it comes to being an elected official, you know, it's nothing like lived experience, right? I feel like I'm a way better elected official today than what I was 2 years ago, than what I was when I first got sworn in, because there's certain things you just learn by being here. I would say my welcome to city council moment is tough because the pandemic hit real fast.
Yeah.
So for us, the pandemic itself was
probably
like my
your
welcome
welcome,
to city
yeah.
council moment, because at the end of the day, this was a real emergency and we didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how bad it was at the time.
Yeah.
So being sent home on maybe like a Thursday or Friday in like the first week of March, that was like, man, this is real. And not only was it real, you know, during the pandemic, because people didn't know what was going on, you know, I was getting access to inside information, and it was important that we didn't leak information. So that was another thing, right? Like you have access to information and people are dying to know what's going on. And unfortunately for the greater good of the public, you know, certain things you share, certain things you probably shouldn't share. So
What's the biggest difference between the Isaiah Thomas that was elected in January of 2020 and now sitting here in the summer of
Gray
2024? Maybe
biggest difference, way more gray hair. Outside of the many gray hairs,
maybe a
I had no
nicer
gray
office,
hair.
a couple more kids, and
Nicer
what
office,
else?
yeah. I mean, we got more stuff to hang around. I would say the biggest difference is like I'm physically different.
Okay.
You know, I my time is different. So like I used to play ball with the kids more than I do now. I almost never play. You know, I think when you're in office, you see and hear a lot of traumatizing things, right? Most of the time, people reach out to us is not because they want to commend us for the great work that we're doing. Clearly, that happens. But most of the time, people reach out to you is because they've hit rock bottom somehow, some way. It could be a death in a family. It could be a financial crisis. It could be a number of which things. And they're coming to you as their last lifeline in a lot of cases. And that becomes taxing, right? Because at the end of the day, as an elected official, we have to, you know, you see us on TV and we get to celebrate a lot of stuff. Hopefully one of our sports teams win a championship. You know, we get invited to parades and stuff like that. But if you really care about people, you end up owning a lot of their horrors and their miseries. And you go to sleep sometimes at night thinking about things that other people are going through. You know, a mom whose son is in jail and she can't figure out what prison that he's in. And she's nervous. You know, those are the things that you own it when you go to sleep. So I think what's different is physically. I'm just like physically a little more drained. I don't have some of the, I guess you could say, wherewithal and stamina to kind of withhold some of the things that I used to be able to. So you know, I just turned 40, but man, it feels like I'm much older than that.
Congratulations.
No,
Happy
thank you.
belated.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Want to put a pin in the politics side of things and sort of switch gears to the basketball and then kind of come
better.
back.
Way
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
Way better.
I guess let's start in the same place. Take me back. Your introduction to basketball, being from Philly, and take me through your own
I
basketball
don't even
journey.
know. You know, I just it's
As long
always
as
been
you
a
can
part
remember.
of my life. I mean, I got a big family. I got 6 older brothers. And, you know, sports is all we ever do. Basketball, baseball, football. It's crazy because I'm actually the only person in my whole family to play high school, college basketball.
Okay.
Everybody else played football and baseball, but especially football. But, you know, football ain't for me, man. I'm clumsy. You know what I mean? I get hurt easy. I played it growing up, but, you know, I've basketball is like entrenched in my DNA, my son. But again, it's not just basketball. Like, I'm a sports family. Like, the craziest thing is I was playing baseball for a long time before I really got serious about basketball. My dad actually used to run Lighthouse Field, which is over on Erie Avenue, right across the street from St. Christopher Hospital.
Yep.
So, like, I remember my sister getting her first set of stitches at Lighthouse Baseball Field. And
Oh, that's
having to
funny.
to Erie Hospital. Yeah, I used to be at Lighthouse Field all the time growing up. So I grew up more playing baseball than basketball, but I fell in love with basketball. I guess you could say in middle school, but it was always there.
You mentioned when you were growing up that teacher and coach was sort of the original aspiration, the
Yeah,
original goal,
yep,
which
yep.
you still
Professional.
found a way to do
Both.
while also being
I
in
sneak in a
politics.
classroom. I was an adjunct professor for a while too.
Yeah.
So I sneak in a classroom and guest lecture when I can,
Yeah.
especially at the collegiate level. I love that the most.
Yeah.
The high school level is clearly my second favorite, but I do still coach high school basketball. I'm still the president of the Coaches Association for Public League. I still sit on the board for PIAA District 12, and I'm intricately involved in athletics in the city and really in the region.
How did obviously knowing that coaching basketball was somewhere you wanted to be, how did that evolve and turn into a head coaching job for Sankofa?
It was an accident.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not our first podcast guest to tell us that.
So I was actually I was trying to coach college basketball.
Okay.
So I actually played at Penn State Abington.
Yeah.
Graduated from Penn State Abington. I was a grad assistant there, and I kind of moved up to be the top assistant at Penn State Abington. And I'm thinking that I'm next in line to get the job. And when the job opened up, they went with somebody completely not in the ecosystem, which I didn't agree with, but I had to respect. And they offered me an opportunity to stay on as an assistant coach, and clearly that those things don't really work out. And after that, I got an opportunity to work at Sankofa full time and be the athletic director and coach there. And so working there full time was cool, but being the athletic director and the head coach was at that time my dream. And little did I know I would enjoy working there full time, even more than being the athletic director and coach. So that kind of is how it happened. It wasn't necessarily something I was seeking or applied for. And look, 15 years later, I'm still coaching high school basketball and intricately involved in sports scenes over there. So
maybe a similar question to the political side, but how do you feel like you've grown, changed, developed in your own coaching
totally
career?
Different. I mean,
Gray hairs too, though.
Well, a lot more gray hairs, but and I play a lot less. But I have a different appreciation for how basketball can be used to change children's lives.
How so?
Basketball is, I say this all the time, is one of the most emotional sports that exists, right? And I was talking somewhere the other day, and I was just, it's not like football, right? Football, you can hide your face, right? So when you watch somebody lose the Super Bowl, they can choose to take their helmet off, but they can keep it on. When it's a big play and someone's at the free throw line, right? You can see exactly how nervous they are or how comfortable they are. We don't know how nervous or how comfortable that pitcher is or that quarterback is or that batter is. In the game, other sports are so far away.
It's both condensed and it's more personable, fewer
so
players
so
and such,
so for basketball, because it's so emotional, young people are often put in a position to experience emotions that they will not experience again until they become an adult, right? So because is emotional and you care about it, you're excited when you win. You're proud when you do something well. You're nervous before the game. You're disappointed when you lose. These are all emotions that happen in real life, and what basketball teaches you to do is how to handle those different emotions. And so when I was a younger coach, just cared more about winning. Not that I want to lose, but the definition of winning has changed.
Yep.
So for me, winning is not about the final score of a game. It's about how many kids that I have that go to college and go in the workforce and to be productive members of society. That matters way more to me than what a championship ever will. And so, as a coach, I've completely evolved because I consider my basketball program a workforce development initiative that puts young people in a position to be successful in life. And when I first started, dude, it was just X's and O's. It was like, just coaching and caring. And I'm just much more intentional now about not just what I do with the kids who leave the program, but who I allow in the program.
Interesting.
And when I was younger, I would take the best players, go after the best players, try to get the best players to, come to my school as a ninth grader. But now I'll recruit the family. I want to meet your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your guardian, whoever that may be, because that is going to be the indicator on whether or not we will quote unquote win.
Yeah.
And that's how I've changed.
Was this sort of progressive understanding of how you want to be as a coach something that just comes with the maturation of 15 years of coaching? Or do you feel like there was a time, whether it was one season, one instance, the stretch of seasons where you felt like things maybe were going off the rails a little bit? How did you come to that understanding?
I think a part of it is the foundation that Sankofa lays and what Sankofa believes in and the principles of the school. So the foundation was there, but I think after you coach for a while and you have success stories and stories that you might not consider a success, it make you feel and understand your role in the journey and the lives of the young men that play for me. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is like, it's not for me, it wasn't a aha moment. It was a lived experience, a cause and effect. You know, because this happened, this is the effect, and what can we do different so that we won't have more outcomes that we don't necessarily desire. Yeah.
One thing I want to unravel a little bit, just as a way to sort of marry the two, your time as a basketball coach and a teacher and the work you do in politics. I think a lot of people know you maybe predominantly as one or the other in their life, but sort of know about the other thing. And it's common in politics, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but it's common in politics that a lot of politicians sort of sit in these ivory towers and make decisions that they're not face-to-face every day with the people that those decisions are affecting.
Sure.
I think it was either last summer or 2 summers ago, I was at the Chosen League, and I mean, you're in flip-flops and a T-shirt, you're with those kids, you talked about recruiting families and meeting moms and meeting dads, and from the political standpoint, the decisions that you're making, you're seeing those people every day, and that's not that common, and maybe it's innate and simple for you, but again, maybe sort of a simple question, but why do you feel like that's important, and why do you go out of your way to make sure that you're spending that time with people?
It keeps me informed.
Yeah.
I mean, you at City Hall, imagine if you came down here every single day. I just had lunch across the street with somebody who is pretty wealthy, who talked about different issues that the city is facing, and a lot of what they're saying is actually true. But the issues that he told me that the city faced is going to be very different than what the young people who are in the Chosen League tell me the issues that the city are facing. And what happens is that there's only a certain demographic of people who's in Center City on a consistent basis. So I'm going to come down here and take care of the business that I need to take care of, meetings and hearings and legislative initiatives, advocacy and voting. That's the job. But the job sometimes consumes people so much that their daily life doesn't allow them to interact with people who can't come down to City Hall at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So how do I make sure that I get perspective that's reflective on the entire city and not just reflective of the people who have access? And that's why it's important for me to try my best to make sure that I continue to do things that puts me with young people and their families on a consistent basis, because that's my way of assessing what type of job we're doing, right? Does the average everyday person touch, feel, and see government different than what it was before I got in the office? Do they have tangible examples of how Philadelphia is a different place because of things that we've done? I mean, I like to think that we have some small wins right now, but what's my barometer to be able to check how we're doing or how we're not doing? I mean, for me, it's the average everyday constituent. So it's important that I go to those type of events and that I'm working with young people on a consistent basis, because, you know, they help me with this gray hair problem I have, but they also put me in a position to make sure I'm informed and included in what's going on and understand their perspective as it relates to how we are doing as government.
Do you feel like that internal understanding of how you need to be informed is a product of your upbringing, mentors, just the people you've been around?
It's all
innate?
freedom schools. It's all freedom schools. So
yeah.
I was we was at the PYB event recently, and the ribbon cutting, and the CEO of PYB is a guy named Kenny Holzman. Kenny Holzman, 25 years ago, was working for the school district of Philadelphia, and he was running out-of-school time program stuff. Don't get me to his exact title, but they started a program called Freedom Schools back in 1999, and I was one of the first teenagers to be in that program.
No way.
So I was like 14 years old. So that's when I first met Kenny Holzman, who's the CEO of PYB. And that program, from 14 to about 25, 11 years of my life, not only introduced me to my wife, but cultivated my perspective of leadership. And really what Freedom Schools taught me was the concept of servant leadership. And we really studied that concept for a long period of time, to the point where, as though I've tried my best to embody what it means to be a servant leader. So what it is in me that makes me respond and govern the way I do is 100% dedicated to my time in Freedom Schools, which my parents got me involved in because they believe in that type of learning and community and leadership style. So I always give my parents credit, and I'm a very spiritual person, so I'm always going to give the creator credit. But the Freedom Schools program is the one thing that I participated in that had the biggest impact on my perception of leadership, and I still abide by those principles today.
That's awesome. We could turn to the Rumph for a moment.
Oh man, let's do it. I love it.
I think that if you weren't, your office is very involved in both the Rumph Classic and the foundation and the work you do, and obviously you have a lot of personal relationships tied to the community and the sphere of the Rumph Classic and of Danny's legacy. But I think if you didn't have any of those work connections, that you would still be someone who would find yourself at the Rumph.
I mean, before I was in city council, I would go to the Rumph. I remember the number of different places. I remember when it started up at the rec center, right?
Yeah.
The Danny Rumph Rec Center, which used to be called Mallory.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I used to work out at Mallory.
Okay.
I used to play for the Sunny Hill League. Some of the guys who played professional and that's come from my generation played both with them and against them, right? So for me, the Danny Rumph Classic and the Danny Rumph Foundation continues to lead the city of Philadelphia as it relates to basketball traditions that have created this culture that really produces some of the best and brightest student athletes, not just here in our region, but really all across the world.
Take us back to that time at Mallory. I think for a lot of us that are, see the tournament now, run the tournament now, the legacy is so huge and the brand is huge.
So I think a lot of the guys who run the Danny Rumph Classic, we all come from the same era. These guys are class of 2000, 2001.
But not everyone fully knows what it was like to be in that gym. Help kind of paint what it was like to be in that gym.
Sweaty, but intense, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of real just Philly guys, guys who grew up in Philly that was just super tough, and to see it grow the way it has grown is nothing short of amazing, because the game is cool, but the money that they raise, that's the free programming for children. That's those heart screening. That's those defibrillators. Miss Candy and what she's done is amazing as it relates to the Germantown section of the city and impacting young people all across the city of Philadelphia. So I think that's the part that's the most phenomenal, is when the organization gives those numbers that talk about how many free heart screenings they've done and how many issues that they found with young people with an irregular heartbeat or with some other condition that a traditional physical would not necessarily have caught. So, I love to see the growth of the organization. It's an honor to partner with the Rumph Foundation for the Rumph Classic as well as for other organizational initiatives. And, I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with on a consistent basis.
Was there sort of this obvious transition as someone who had been around the Rumph for so many years that once you got in office to say, now I'm in a position where not only can I support it with my, with my time and my relationships, but now, maybe there's an extra way that I can kind of be around and be able to help?
It wasn't obvious.
Really?
Because it was something that already had its own DNA. It had a reputation. It was a great event. I think really what happened was, I think it was LaSalle who was having construction.
Yeah.
And Mike just came and said, we need a new location. And as we started to talk about possible options for a new location, COVID issues and things of that capacity, that's when we begin to think about what does a more collaborative effort look like. And you look up now, it's an official event in partnership with my office. And for us, not only do we try to provide funding from the city to make sure the event goes in a way that's extremely successful, we try to make sure that we provide other support systems as well for safety purposes and things of that capacity, because nothing better than, a 9-year-old student meeting Tyrese Maxey for the first time, or Jason Tatum, I got the Tatum picture, or whoever might be at the event this year. Allen Iverson's probably my favorite person that comes through almost every year.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a young person and what that does to them and how that inspires them to meet their hero.
Creates
and at the end of the day,
space.
for it to be done in a way that's free, in a way that's informal, right? And have to pay $1,000 for parking and all this money for a ticket and get to the game an hour and a half early. You just didn't have to do all that. So it's a unique experience that children in the city of Philadelphia get, and the smiles of the young people alone make it all worth it.
Councilman, this has been really great, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to, invite us into your office and spend time with us. Last question we ask everyone that comes on this podcast.
Sure.
Everyone's got their favorite Danny Rumph Classic memory. As someone who's been around it for so many years,
that's a tough one.
Councilman, what is yours?
That's a tough one. I honestly think, and I have a little bias, but you know, I think I think my favorite memory.
If you need
Well,
to
it's
give
a
more than one,
couple.
it's okay.
Yeah,
Raheem Thompson gave us 3, so
yeah, I really like when the Morris twins
yeah,
really started to establish themselves as folks
yeah,
in the event. I think the Morris twins and their involvement and their participation to me, what was huge. I remember Tatum came. I remember Harden came one
yep,
year too. That was a big one. There's so many different people that came. Tyrese Maxey. See, Tyrese Maxey will go on my list because my son, my son is 12 now, but maybe 2 years ago, I believe, he got a chance to meet Tyrese Maxey, and so that would be one of my favorites as well too.
definitely.
But really, the Morris twins, I think I would give the credit to them, and when they really got the FOE team, and maybe like 3 years ago, people was arguing about who was the best player in Philly, and Marcus Morris. I mean, he might have killed the whole classic. One
Yeah,
year, Marcus Morris.
yeah,
I mean, uh, everybody. And Markeith played too, but Marcus Morris. I mean, I could remember hearing Gee on the mic the whole time, just saying baby food, baby food, baby
yeah.
food. And I don't know if that was the first year he started saying that, but Gee on the mic and just the whole culture with it. Yeah, I think I would go with either Harden coming, Tyrese Maxey with my son, and then the Morris twins really digging in with the FOE family, and even Malik Wayne's playing with them one year was pretty dope as well too.